That is about work he did on a Trump real estate deal in Russia. This apparently happened between January and June of 2016 in the heat of a campaign for the White House. President Trump moments ago reacting to that news from the South Lawn, calling Michael Cohen a liar.
It talked about his position, what he's trying to do, because he's a weak person and not a very smart person. What he's trying to do is end. And it's very simple. He's got himself a big prison sentence, and he's trying to get a much lesser prison sentence by making up a story. Now, here's the thing. Even if he was right, it doesn't matter, because I was allowed to do whatever I wanted during the campaign.
Joining us now, Brett Baer, anchor of Special Report, to kick off the 11 a.m. Eastern Time hour. A lot has happened over the last couple hours. Brett, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, nice job up there, steering all the trains that are coming in on this story. Listen, this is really something to hear the president push back so vigorously. He's often, that's how he approaches things. But you have now his former personal lawyer admitting that he lied to Congress when asked specifically about a project in Moscow and about ties and connections to Russians about that project. The president is saying his original statement, Michael Cohen's statement to Congress, is the one that's truthful. Cohen is saying, no, I lied about that, and he's obviously telling Mueller something because he's made a deal. So somebody's telling the truth and somebody isn't. How does that fit into the big picture? What we don't know are all the puzzle pieces. It does seem that after the president filled out the questionnaire with his lawyers and turned it back in to Mueller, that a lot of things have sped up since that time. I think that the timing is really about that. And it seems like it's all coming to a head, Sandra. Possibly, between now and Christmas, you could have something from the Mueller folks.
There is constant questions about when this probe could eventually wrap. Some indications that it was nearing the end. We got reaction from Senator Mike Lee in the middle of all this morning, and he said this.
I hope that it is wrapping soon. This has been going on for the better part of 2 years. And I want him to finish his work, and I think he ought to wrap it up soon. And I don't think anything about this latest development also necessarily indicates that the Mueller probe has to last much longer.
That is the question. How does this change things, and will the Mueller probe still stay the course?
It's the answer that we often start with, is we don't know what we don't know about what Mueller has and what he may have and how it's going to come out. We do know that the process is that he's going to file some detailed report, and right now that report goes to Matt Whitaker, the acting attorney general, and that's why you see some Senate Democrats pretty apoplectic about that possibility, saying Whitaker should not be in that role. It does not seem like the president is anxious to get Whitaker out of that position. It doesn't seem like there's a big effort to get an AG nominee in the works quickly. So that's the process we're dealing with here, and how that all fits together, the puzzle pieces, that's what we're trying to, it's a lot of speculation today.
In the reaction from the president we just heard a few moments ago on his way to the G20 summit, he said this outside the White House, called his ex-lawyer a weak person, not a smart person, claims he's lying to get a reduced sentence. He concluded all that by a final question saying he's not worried at all about him, but his tweeting before the surprise court appearance by Michael Cohen this morning, this was one of them. Did you ever see an investigation more in search of a crime? At the same time, Mueller and the angry Democrats aren't even looking at the atrocious and perhaps subversive crimes that were committed by crooked Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. A total disgrace. You just continue to see the president's frustration through all this. And here he is making this departure, major meetings with world leaders. He confirmed just now, in other news, that he's meeting with Vladimir Putin for certain.
When he's irritated about something, he lets you know. And the filter is kind of right there on Twitter, and he has made that clear. Why? Why, is he under attack? And why, does he feel compelled to go after Michael Cohen? He says he's a liar. Somebody's telling the truth. And I think eventually we're going to find out. The bigger news out of this is the substantial news of the meetings that are happening on the sidelines of the G20. I mean, the fact that the Russian president and the President Trump are meeting, in the background of all of this is going to be a big news event after Helsinki and what we saw there, how that all comes together after Russia's actions in Ukraine. And perhaps more importantly for the economy is the meeting with President Xi and whether some deal about tariff, no tariff, and Chinese goods is going to happen. That affects the world economy. This, we are trying to piece together, pieces of the Rubik's Cube to get the colors to be on the same side.
I mean, that's moving markets right now, what the president just said on that. And most of the questions that he fielded were obviously on the Cohen news this morning. But markets are moving to session lows on this. China, what we have is billions of dollars coming into us, tariff taxes. I'm open to making a deal, but I like the deal we have right now, the president said on China. Very firmly speaking there, ahead of the meeting with President Xi. A lot could come out of this. I mean, this is going to be a busy couple days for the president.
It will. And I think that those meetings in particular are the two newsiest so far. But there are a lot of topics on the agenda for all those world leaders in the wake of what we're seeing with Saudi Arabia, Iran's actions, what we're seeing in France about climate change. I mean, there are all kinds of issues. But the two meetings with Russia and China are the newsiest. I think that you're going to see a lot of focus on what he said about Michael Cohen and speculation about what Mueller has or doesn't have. But we don't know what we don't know, and we'll report it as it comes out.
And hopefully you'll know a lot more by 6 p.m. tonight. Special report with Brett Baer. Brett, thank you very much for your time. And by the way, on Putin, the president just said I will probably be meeting with President Putin. Good time to have that meeting. So that is a big deal.
Looks like Saturday morning
as well.
in Argentina. You're right. Then Saturday night with the Chinese leader. Brett, thanks for that. Catherine Herridge, back to you in Washington. What you gathered over the past 30 minutes, Catherine?
All right, Bill. So I just want to kind of set the table here, because what we know now from this guilty plea or this new agreement with Michael Cohen is that there's a central document that kind of lays out the facts. And it's this 2-page, I have a draft of the summary that was provided to the Senate Intelligence Committee in August of 2017 about this Moscow real estate project. What Cohen has said this morning is that he lied about when they had discussions about this real estate project in Moscow, and that he also lied about how extensive the conversations were with specific individuals about traveling to Moscow. And what he told the Senate committee, I'm going to read it here, is the following. On the timing, he said the proposal was under consideration at the Trump Organization from September 2015 until the end of January 2016. What he's told the court this morning is that, in fact, the discussions continued until June of 2016, so several months later. In addition, he goes on to discuss possible travel to Moscow connected to this project. He states, I never considered asking Mr. Trump to travel to Russia in connection with this proposal. I told Mr. Sater that Mr. Trump would not travel to Russia unless there was a definitive agreement in place. To the best of my knowledge, Mr. Trump was never in contact with anyone about this proposal other than me on 2 occasions, including signing a non-binding letter of intent in 2015. I also just want to read the final section of this document, because I think that this is newsworthy as well. It says, the Trump Tower Moscow proposal was not related in any way to Mr. Trump's presidential campaign. Moreover, the proposal had nothing to do with any alleged collusion with Russia regarding the U.S. presidential election. Both I and the Trump Organization were evaluating this proposal and many others from solely a business standpoint and rejected going forward on that basis. I spoke with someone who is close to the Trump legal team this morning about the developments, and the question they tabled was, how is a change in the timing and any discussion of travel material to a crime of collusion? Because the one fact that has been a constant here between the statement to Congress and now the statement to the court this morning is that the deal fell through. It never went through. So how is the change in the timing, as well as the conversations, material to a crime in this particular case. What we don't know at this point is how this Russian-born real estate developer, and as I recall, one time sort of snitch or informant for the FBI, Felix Sater, sort of figure in the mix. I know that's kind of a whole nother discussion, but there were emails between Felix Sater and Michael Cohen in 2015 and, as I recall, into 2016 about the project and what Sater billed as the benefits of the project and developing a relationship with Moscow. But again,
Catherine,
the deal never went through.
So that's
carefully
to the part of the court documents that you were just reading to us. I want to quote the president, okay? When I run for president doesn't mean I'm not allowed to do business. I often joke that I was the only person that campaigned and ran a business. And then he later said, we had a position to possibly do a deal in Moscow. I decided not to do it. I was focused on running for president. There would be nothing wrong if I did do it. Is anything in this document today on behalf of Michael Cohen, does it contradict anything he just said, do you believe?
You know, it's, I'd say what was tabled in court today doesn't conflict with that. And when I look at this two-page summary that was provided to the Senate Intelligence Committee, the one area that there does appear to be a conflict is that Cohen told the Senate Intelligence Committee, to the best of my knowledge, Mr. Trump was never in contact with anyone about this proposal other than me on 2 occasions, including a signing non-binding letter of intent in 2015. I'm not sure that amounts to a conflict, but it seems consistent with what the president is saying.
I'm asking you to do a lot with this live interpretation here, and sometimes that's not fair to do, and with all regards to your efforts down there in Washington, and we'll see whether or not this conflict.
But this is the key document. The key document is the 2-page summary about the Moscow proposal. We have a draft copy of that document. That document makes specific statements about the timing when they considered it, and also discussions about traveling to Moscow. But at the end of the day, the consistent fact is that the deal didn't go through and no one traveled to Moscow. And the question from a legal point of view, I'm not a lawyer, but I've covered a lot of this, is how that difference in the timing is material to an actual crime bill.
And we're trying to figure out if this moves the ball forward, and if so, by how much. Thank you, Catherine. Catherine Harridge in Washington.
More reaction to Michael Cohen's guilty plea. Senator John Kennedy saying we need to wrap this up. It's been 17 months. Next up, we get reaction from Senator John Thune. He will join us live next.
He was convicted of various things unrelated to us. He was given a fairly long jail sentence, and he's a weak person. And by being weak, unlike other people that you watch, he's a weak person, and what he's trying to do is get a reduced sentence. So he's lying.
My biggest concern in terms of the Mueller investigation, let's get it all wrapped up. And it looks to me like there's some movement in terms of, I don't want to tell Mr. Mueller how to do his job. He doesn't need my counsel on that. He seems quite able. But we do need to wrap it up. It's been, what, 17 months now? And the American people are entitled to know what happened.
There was Senator John Kennedy reacting to the news this morning, and now Senator John Thune joins us. Senator Thune, thank you for coming on the program this morning. You've had a couple hours now to digest this. What exactly does it mean to you? Michael Cohen, the president's former personal attorney, pleading guilty to making false statements, the first charge in the Mueller probe.
Well, I think as you've been reporting on this morning, Sandra, it's a little early to be drawing any clear conclusions about any of this. I think there's a lot of information that needs to be acquired before we can do that. But as the president pointed out, I mean, he thinks that Michael Cohen is obviously trying to make a deal, and in his own self-interest to do that. And I don't think at this point that there has been anything that in any way changes the landscape, so to speak, where the president is concerned. And he's argued all along there wasn't any collusion on the part of his campaign team or his administration with Russia, and I haven't seen anything that disproves that.
Senator Kennedy just said it's been 17 months. Let's wrap this up. Senator Mike Lee was on our program when this news was breaking, said a very similar thing. How much longer do you think the Mueller probe has to go?
Well, I think that's right. I mean, all of us have said we want it to be thorough. We want him to complete his work. But at the same time, it can't just go on forever. And the longer these things drag on, it's just, it gets, I think, very wearing on the American people. And there should be a point at which they've done their work, they've asked every question they possibly can, they have interviewed every person they possibly can, and it's time to move on. The president has important work to do for the American people. Obviously, this has been a big distraction. At some point, the conclusions need to be filed. The report needs to come out. We need to know what happened. But I agree with my colleagues that the time, I think, has come to start drawing this to a conclusion.
Meanwhile, the president made all these comments, such as calling Cohen a weak person and claiming he's lying to get his reduced sentence. He made all these comments as he was departing for the G20 summit. This is going to be big, and he made some news there outside of the White House saying about his meetings with world leaders. President Xi, obviously, he'll be meeting with, but President Putin of Russia, I will probably be meeting with Putin. A good time to be having this meeting. This is going to be a big couple of days for this president.
No question about it. There's a lot going on in the world. The world, as we know, is a very dangerous place. It's also, in terms of the economic interests that we have at stake, particularly with regard to the relationship with China, is critically important to our economy and obviously the people that I represent, farmers and ranchers in the middle of the country who export a lot of the commodities, things that they raise and grow, to places like China. So I'm hoping that there will be some constructive discussions that get held and hopefully some forward progress with respect to the trade relationship that we have with China, that they will end some of these trade abuses and create a more level playing field for businesses in this country, farmers and ranchers in this country to compete on. And with respect to Russia, I hope the president delivers a very stern message, and I hope he uses this opportunity to unify the international community against what the Russians are doing and make it very clear that this flagrant violation of Ukraine's sovereignty and of international law won't be tolerated.
Finally, Senator Thune, going back to China for a second, he said, I'm open to making a deal, but I like the deal we have right now. Does that leave you more optimistic than you were heading into this about a deal happening?
Well, I think that the thing that the president is his thing. He loves to negotiate, and obviously he likes to go into a negotiation with as much leverage as he possibly can have. And I do think that this president, with respect to how he's handled the situation with China, is projecting strength, and the fact that China needs America more than we need them. And I think that, I'm hoping at least, that as a result of the discussions that occur in Argentina and then hopefully subsequent to that, that we end up with a new trade deal with China that actually does open up their market. It gives them it gives our producers the access to their market, the same access that their businesses have to ours. And I think in the end, that's what he's trying to get. He's trying to create fairness in terms of the trade relationship we have with a country in the world that in the past has stolen our intellectual property and manipulated their currency and done a lot of other things that we don't like.
Senator John Thune, a breaking news morning. We're thankful for you joining us. Good perspective and good to get your thoughts this morning. Thank you, sir.
Remember, Michael Cohen's original connection was this whole thing with Stormy Daniels. There is news on that front. We're going to get to that coming up next, right here as our coverage continues. Fox News alert right now. Michael Cohen, apparently before this judge, caught everybody by surprise. He was supposed to be in court 2 weeks from now for his sentencing. That's all changed. Howard Kurtz has been watching this from Washington. Howie, good morning to you. Just want to remind our viewers that part of Cohen's connection, being a longtime attorney for President Trump, is that he apparently settled these payments with Stormy Daniels. And the relationship of Stormy Daniels and her attorney, Michael Avenatti, apparently is more stormy than we thought before. There was news on that today. Just tie that in there, Howie.
Well, it was in Cohen's first potential trial where he pleaded guilty. A lot of it had to do with his New York taxi business, but also to making the hush money payments to the adult film star Stormy Daniels and saying that he did so at President Trump's direction. This has nothing to do with the plea today. Now Stormy Daniels has put out a statement, which I know you're going to read, expressing unhappiness with Michael Avenatti. Let me say with my customary understatement, this has not been a good month for Avenatti, who had fantasies of running for president. He was arrested on charges that he disputes, domestic abuse against a girlfriend. That led Stormy Daniels to say she might drop him. And then this latest development.
Okay, so here's the statement from Stormy Daniels. Here it is. He has spoken on my behalf without my approval, she says. He filed a defamation case against Donald Trump against my wishes. He repeatedly refused to tell me how my legal defense fund was being spent. Now he's launched a new crowdfunding campaign using my face and name without my permission and attributing words to me that I never wrote or said. I don't want to hurt Michael, but it's time to set the record straight, end quote. I don't know where the relationship goes, Howie. Here's Avenatti's response. I am and have always been Stormy's biggest champion. I have personally sacrificed an enormous amount of money, time, and energy toward assisting her because I believe in her. I've always been an open book with Stormy as to all aspects of her cases, and she knows that. How we go from there?
Well, for Stormy to say that Avenatti actually filed a defamation suit against the President of the United States against her wishes is a pretty serious charge to make against a lawyer. So it seems to me like this relationship, which of course made Avenatti into a big cable news star, is heading for divorce. But the Michael Cohen connection is interesting because, you know, the press has long viewed Cohen as being sort of a sideshow, not as important as Paul Manafort. But because he was Trump's longtime personal lawyer, he not only knows about the Stormy payments, which, of course, may be personally embarrassing to Donald Trump, but today's plea, you know, the president coming out, as we saw moments ago, and saying that Michael Cohen is a weak man and he's lying to get a more lenient sentence, he probably had no choice but to plead guilty to lying to Congress because the special counsel has emails showing that he, Cohen, continued to talk, or at least try to talk to Moscow about this potential Trump Tower in Moscow. Now, the president's right. As a businessman running for president, he had every right to pursue this project. It wasn't a secret. But with Cohen talking to Moscow about this beyond the point where everybody said it was dead, it raises for Bob Mueller the prospect of the president having a financial interest in dealing with Russia during this time. Later, of course, the whole question of hacked emails and Russian collusion. I'm not saying there's anything there. The project never went anywhere, but it's another piece of the puzzle, and I think Cohen could be potentially more troubling for the Trump camp than Manafort.
We shall see then. Thank you, Howard Kurtz in Washington. Thank you, sir.
Good to see you.
Sandra.
Well, more on the Cohen matter for you in just a moment, but another big story that we're watching this morning, the migrant caravan re-sparking the debate over funding the border wall. Will the president shut down the government if Democrats don't budge on this issue? Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs will join us live to weigh in next.
Everything he was concerned about with the caravan is coming true. And if you don't see this as a major problem for Mexico and the United States, you just hate Trump way too much.
32 here in New York City, Lower Manhattan. A bit earlier today, 2 hours ago, Michael Cohen, the former personal attorney for the president, admitted in court to making false statements back in 2017 to U.S. senators about a plan to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. The president has responded by saying that Michael Cohen is lying, trying to get a reduced prison sentence. So all this is moving back and forth today. Where it goes, we do not know, but this was a surprise appearance on behalf of Cohen. We'll watch it for you as we move throughout the day here. Sandra, in the meantime, 11:33. Here we go.
The president took off just a short time ago, heading to the G20 summit in Argentina. He's got a jam-packed schedule, more than half a dozen high-level meetings with foreign leaders in just 48 hours. Trade, China, Russia, all big topics on the agenda. White House correspondent Kevin Corke is live in Buenos Aires. Kevin, is it fair to say the president's looking forward to this gathering?
To be frank, he loathes this sort of gathering, right, where you sort of get multinationalists and globalists together and they collude, in his opinion, at the expense of the American worker and the U.S. economy. Now, that said, he is a deal maker. And so, yes, this is an opportunity for the president to come here. And you and I have talked about this idea, Sandra, a number of important meetings in the offing for the president and U.S. officials with a number of stakeholders, global and regional. So as it stands, we know that the president and the U.S. delegation will meet with Argentina, Japan, Germany, South Korea, Turkey, India, and then the two big ones over there on the right of the screen there, Russia and, of course, China, about which the president said this on Twitter this morning. Billions of dollars are pouring into the coffers of the USA because of the tariffs charged to China. And there is, he said, a long way to go. He added this: if companies don't want to pay tariffs, build in the USA. Otherwise, let's just make our country richer than ever before. Now, that reference to tariffs, Sandra, is a result of unfair trade practices, barriers to economic entry for American products and businesses, as well as outright theft of U.S. intellectual property. That's how White House officials will tell you this has all come about. And that strategy, what the president says is meant to get Beijing to play fair, is precisely what he told the American people he'd do.
I think we're very close to doing something with China, but I don't know that I want to do it, because what we have right now is billions and billions of dollars coming into the United States in the form of tariffs or taxes. So I really don't know, but I will tell you that I think China wants to make a deal. I'm open to making a deal, but frankly, I like the deal we have right now.
So if you listen to the way he described that, Sandra, clearly the president is rather pleased with how things are going with respect to those additional payments. But time will tell if there will be any sort of headway made here at the G20. Sandra?
Sure will. Kevin, and the president confirming the planned meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin is on. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, listen, there had been a great deal of question about whether or not that meeting would actually take place, to be candid with you, because I know that you and I talked about this idea that with everything that's been happening with Moscow, its aggression toward its neighbors in the region, most notably meddling the affairs of Ukraine, well, you could see how maybe or maybe not this meeting would actually take place. Now, to be fair, let me just add this. Concrete deliverables is what this is all about. You want to come to a big summit and you want to have deliverables. Well, that's difficult, especially when you consider the Kremlin's recent attack on and seizure of Ukrainian vessels in the Sea of Azov. In response, by the way, Ukraine is now asking NATO warships to patrol that region. So what will that meeting look like on Saturday? I can't wait. I'm sure the president's feeling the same way. Of course, we'll have all the details as we continue our coverage, not just today, but throughout the conference. But for now, back to you, Sandra.
Kevin Cork, thank you.
Another alert now. Fox's alert on the caravan showdown. The Justice Department now sending agents to the southern border in response to a call from Homeland Security. DHS reports 600 known criminals and gang members are in that caravan. They also report one's a member of MS-13. Republican Andy Biggs from Arizona, House Judiciary Committee and more. Sir, good morning to you and welcome back here. I'm looking at 33 DEA agents, 10 U.S. Marshal Services agents. Trump administration officials saying we're building a team down there. What does that team do? How is this resolved, sir?
Well, what we've seen is the caravan is exactly what we thought it was. It consisted of a lot of people who have malevolent intentions. We've had 600 people arrested last weekend in Tijuana, over 120 arrested. DEA is going down there because so much of this is involving drug interdiction as well, which is why we've talked about a border barrier and security, is because we're seeing human smuggling, but also drug trafficking. And they believe that there's some significant numbers in this caravan who might be trafficking in drugs. That's why you're seeing DEA go, U.S. Marshals to transport people who we arrest.
No. Your colleague, Anthony Brown, soundbite number 2, guys, here was on with Sandra a bit earlier today. And your colleague in the House there on immigration, he's looking for a bigger, more thoughtful deal. This is what he said.
I think Democrats are willing to talk about enhanced border security, whether it's nominal physical barriers, whether it's more human resources on the border, but a $5 billion wall just isn't going to cut it. Border security is an American issue, not just a Democrat or Republican, but so is comprehensive immigration reform.
Well, I don't know how much more money they do on this, if they do it at all, sir. What's the outcome?
Well, we need $25 billion. That's just the bottom line. If you ask for 5, you're already hearing Anthony here saying they want somewhere south of that significantly. And the reality is they want comprehensive immigration reform. There were some bills up there that looked like comprehensive immigration reform earlier this session that really didn't get the horses across. And I think that's the problem, is that you end up weighing this stuff down with so many things that some people like, but a lot of people don't like. And maybe what you need to do is, how about a border security, border wall bill that's individual, that's clear, that's transparent. We can see who wants border security and who doesn't with one bill. And I think that's the way we should go. And then we can take some of these other issues as they come.
Well, sir, thank you for your time. We've got a lot of breaking news today. Thank you, Andy Biggs,
Thanks,
Republican from Arizona. Thank you.
Breaking news, the president tweeting on board Air Force One, of course, on his way to the G20 summit, just tweeted out about that upcoming meeting with Vladimir Putin based on the fact that the ships and sailors have not been returned to Ukraine from from Russia. I've decided it would be best for all parties, he writes, concerned to cancel my previously scheduled meeting in Argentina with President Vladimir Putin. I look forward to a meaningful summit again as soon as this situation is resolved. The president tweeting this just a few moments ago. Let's go back to Kevin Corke in Buenos Aires, where you await the president.
It was about a week or so ago.
Well, literally, you and I just talked about this, right? It seemed a fairly difficult deliverable when you consider everything that Russia has been doing, its aggressive posture. By the way, not just with Ukraine. We've seen it with Crimea. We've seen this play out with Georgia on a previous occasion. And so this idea that you would meet with President Putin, knowing full well that you have this conflict with, by the way, a U.S. ally, Ukraine certainly is, it just doesn't pass the smell test. This does not surprise me at all. What may surprise, I think, some people is that it took until now for the president to make this announcement. So we have just learned, as you pointed out, Sandra, on Twitter, the president has at least for now canceled his G20 meeting with Russia's President Vladimir Putin. Subject to change, I would always add that, because you never know.
It's fair to say that, Kevin.
Like this, they could be very fluid.
It's fair to say that, Kevin, as the president was departing, which was, gosh, just about a little over an hour ago, as he was talking to reporters at the White House, he said the meeting was still on then. So just over the past hour, he has changed his mind.
Yep, absolutely right. And I'm not surprised because, again, it doesn't really have the right look, right? You're going to meet with this guy knowing that his government has been engaging a U.S. ally aggressive manner. And so this doesn't surprise me, but what might surprise some folks at home is that it could change again, Sandra. You and I have watched this happen before. The president can be unpredictable, and we'll have to wait and see if something changes between now and Saturday. But for now, back to you.
In one of the president's most recent interviews, remember, Kevin, he said, I don't like that aggression, referring to Russia. I don't like that Russian aggression at all.
That's right.
And threatened to cancel this meeting with Putin. Then it looked like it was on, and now it is off, according to the latest tweet from the president. Kevin Corke, thank you.
Got a little bit of leverage, too. If Putin wants to have that meeting, he'll release those Ukrainian sailors and ships, and we'll see whether or not that happens over the next 48 hours or so. Also, a lot of reaction to the Michael Cohen news today, pleading guilty to a new federal charge of lying about the work he did during the Trump years and a real estate deal apparently in Russia. How does that fit into the Mueller matter? How does that move the ball forward, if at all? Next.
Clearly, the Mueller investigation is starting to really accelerate. He did what he should have done, which was take a low profile in the 2 months before the election, but it's starting to accelerate now.
Argentina we go. Big meeting. G20 is going to get underway later today and into the weekend. Significant meetings were scheduled, one including with Vladimir Putin, and that now has been canceled. Here's the tweet from Air Force One. Based on the fact that the ships and sailors have not been returned to Ukraine from Russia, I've decided it would be best for all parties concerned to cancel my previously scheduled meeting in Argentina with President Vladimir Putin and look forward to a meaningful summit again as soon as this situation is resolved. End tweet. Now, we were told they would meet for 2 hours on Saturday morning. Maybe that still happens if Putin is willing to return the sailors and the ships back to Ukraine. So we'll watch this story and whether or not that meeting will go back on the schedule. Saturday night is the big meeting with President Xi from China. So we're watching all of that now. On board and off we go.
He was convicted of various things unrelated to us. He was given a fairly long jail sentence, and he's a weak person. And by being weak, unlike other people that you watch, he's a weak person, and what he's trying to do is get a reduced sentence.
President Trump slamming Michael Cohen earlier as his former attorney pleads guilty to a new federal charge admitting he lied to Congress about a Trump real estate project in Russia. John Yoo is a former deputy assistant attorney general, now a law professor at the University of California at Berkeley. John, thank you for coming on the program this morning. What can you add to what we know and what we're learning about all of this morning?
So one thing is this is not a harm to Michael Cohen, but this is a harm to the president. Because if you look at what Michael Cohen's pled to, the likelihood that he's not going to serve any significant jail time for this, to me, this reads like the independent counsel, Robert Mueller, giving a reward to Michael Cohen for a lot of cooperation. And if I were the president's lawyers, I would be worried because I don't know exactly what Cohen's been saying. On the upside for the president, as he just said in the clip that you just played, even what Michael Cohen is pleading to here doesn't involve any kind of law breaking by candidate Donald Trump during the primaries. The claim here is that Michael Cohen was trying to do a business deal in Moscow, and it went past the January 2016 primary date that Cohen had earlier testified to before Congress. So he's being convicted not because he did anything illegal trying to do the deal. He's being convicted because he lied to Congress. And there doesn't seem to be, if you look at the plea agreement and you look at the indictments, there's a mention that he might have discussed it with Trump, but we don't have anything in there that actually verifies what Trump said in response.
What implications does this have overall? You're suggesting the president and his legal team should be worried. Obviously, people hearing that would want you to be more specific, but what implications does it have overall for the Mueller probe? As we've heard from so many who want this thing wrapped up, it's just gone on too long.
Well, you can see the signs. Again, there's good and bad for the president and his team and for Mueller and his team. On the good side, I do think Mueller is starting to wrap things up. You had the appearance in court a few days ago about Paul Manafort not cooperating under his plea bargain. That you would do if you were fairly confident in everything you had. You don't need Paul Manafort anymore, and you're bringing the conclusion to the investigation. Same thing with Cohen here. I think you don't go in public and provide this kind of reward to Cohen for cooperation until you're nearing the end of the probe. The downside is, if you look at what Mueller's pursuing, to me, this is part of the investigation that's trying to show contacts where the Trump campaign was trying to reach out to Russia, in Mueller's view, trying to reach out to Russia, get assistance from Russia monetarily or by getting information on Hillary Clinton or allegedly helping break into the emails. So that part, I don't think in the end there's enough here still for Mueller to indict a president. And of course, Justice Department doesn't think it can.
I only have a short time left here, but I want to just get this reaction in from the Democrat senator from Connecticut, Richard Blumenthal, as we continue to get reaction. Listen.
This Cohen guilty plea is another piece in the mosaic that could really provide a deeper insight into the full picture of the president's liability here. Criminal culpability and conspiracy involving Michael Cohen have always been front and center, and his guilty plea opens a new avenue investigation.
As you heard there, the senator suggesting this guilty plea opens a new avenue of investigation. Your final thoughts on that before we let you go?
I don't think this is a new avenue. I think this is an old avenue. I think you're seeing Mueller start to close it down. What Mueller seems to me to be doing is sort of building the facts for the report that he may issue to Congress, even a referral to impeachment. These are not things you could indict a president for, sitting president for, as violating the law, but it adds to the long list of things that Mueller might think Trump has somehow crossed an ethical line and that would be better handled by Congress and impeachment proceedings than a criminal trial.
John Yoo, thank you for your time this morning, sir.
Thank you, Sam.
Back to the news again from Argentina. There will be no meeting with Vladimir Putin and President Trump. We will follow all of that. Kevin Quirk back live in Argentina and more coming up next.